by 1920. Now we have our Illustrator thing that we made that we're very proud of. Now there's a bunch of different ways we can import this. You could export. You could go into Illustrator, and you could export a PNG with an alpha. But most people, what they seem to do is go to your Finder. I'm going to go back to Photoshop. Again, Command Tab, and you can go through all your things and go back and forth. It's really nice. They're going to open Finder. They're going to grab their little AI, and they're going to drag it in. And it'll have this little thing. It'll say, OK, and there's your seahorse. That's OK. It's in there. It looks OK. You might have to scale it up or down. And it is there. OK? So that's one way to do it. Not necessarily good or bad, but I would prefer to, let's see, there's a couple different ways we can do this. Another one we could do is we grab our layer and we hit Command C and put it to the clipboard, and Command V, and it'll come in as a smart object, which is nice. Smart object means it's vector based, so you can scale it however you want and you won't lose any resolution, which is awesome. But the most powerful way to do it is to go up to Place Linked. So if I go up to Place Linked, I can grab my seahorse through here, say hit OK, I place it there, and it's vector based. I can start doing an animation just as before, but the important thing to recognize here is if I go back to the seahorse or whatever your art is, and you click on your layer and you're like, I really want to change that, I can now update the seahorse, go back to here, and it'll be automatically changed. So that means shape, color, everything. So it's a live thing, which is awesome. So remember that, Place Linked, very powerful. And we'll get into that more in After Effects, so you can actually bring in the layers individually, which is really nice. But here we have to break it down a little bit. Even though it's a linked thing, we still have to break it down. So what I would recommend is, say, with everything we need, here his pupil is isolated, okay? That means we can animate the pupil if we have that pupil on a separate layer. So in After Effects, this is perfectly set up. We could bring it in. We have two different layers that we can animate. But in here, what I think we can do is I will save two different versions, and I will do seahorse pupil ISO. Okay, so now you can just put the pupil on, and there it is. And back to Photoshop, and let me go back to my recent. Here's a seahorse. We're going to turn off the eye. Go back into Photoshop. The eye is gone. But now, even though this is like a bad example because I could easily just make a circle layer for his eye, but let's imagine it's a more complex thing. Now I have two different files, and I can just place linked with my eye ISO, and it's literally just a giant eye. There it is. Put it into place. Okay, so now this is kind of getting into a little bit more complex animation, but it's not very complex still. I could duplicate each of these like this, and then go in here, and now I can individually, I can start to make him look as he moves. But these layers are going to get really complex as we go forward. A better way would be to layer it. Okay, seahorse. There we go. So now I can just duplicate this whole folder and hit Command T, and I get the bounding box, and now I can move and start to animate him across the screen. And what happened to the eye? Nobody knows. There it is. Start to animate across, and I'm not sure why. We've had some weird bugs here already. I probably have to restart because the clipboard seems to make these happen. But basically, let's imagine that the pupil actually worked. And we start to animate them. And then we could animate the pupil within this. Gosh, why is that not working? Oh, look at that. It's a giant pupil. Okay. So anyways, we will imagine that this actually worked in this demo. And basically, the seahorse is looking around. But if you do it this method, and I apologize because it's actually a really cool method, because then you have absolute control. You can keep animating across, get your main body down, and then you can make your for this example, the seahorse look and peer around as he's moving, and it's just one thing. So we animate the main block, but then when we actually going to animate into a sequence using our sequence create cell animation here, just keep in mind that you have to merge group or convert to smart object, so it's its own separate layer. So once you do that, then we can go through our normal steps of make frames from layers, and it'll work. So another thing to keep in mind is when things like this happen, like the eye, if this had happened in real life, like production, I would have stopped